Very Emily Stark, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This is our second time in this studio space. You all kind of crescent this space last week.
Takes a little bit of adjustment.
Yeah.
There's so much space.
There's so much space, but there's all this natural light.
The lighting
is great.
This is a nice
Like, this is
backdrop of the
fantastic.
pho restaurant behind us.
Literally. Well, you are the editor-in-chief of Natural Womanhood. So today is going to be all about pregnancy and hormones and fertility.
Great.
Which I'm so excited about.
Really good.
But you have 3 kids yourself, right?
4.
You have
Yep.
4.
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
How old are they?
So my oldest is 8, and goes 8, 6, 3, and 1.5.
How did you and your husband meet?
On OkCupid.
I
Can make me
love
out
it.
myself on that? Yeah. We were living in DC at the time. He was in med school at USIS up the street, the military's medical school. And I was a junior at Georgetown.
Wow.
So I had studied abroad, and while I was abroad, a good girlfriend of mine had started doing OkCupid and had a lot of fun. And I got back, and she was like, "You're 21 now. You're interning on the Hill. Like, get on it. You can meet people after for drinks." And we were like having a glass of wine that night, and she was like, "I'm just setting up a profile for you." And a week later, my husband messaged me.
1 week.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
I feel like, I mean, even fast forward to today, right? That was, you said you guys have been married for how long?
Almost 11 years.
11 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So fast forward 11 years, it's still kind of a taboo thing to talk about meeting your spouse or your partner on dating apps.
So that's not the part I feel is taboo. I'm Catholic, and people are like, "Oh, you met on Catholic Match, right?" And the taboo thing to me is being like, "No, it's the sketchy
It's a different
It's
one.
okay,
Yeah.
Cupid." Like, but it was free at the time,
Yeah.
so I don't
There
know
you
if
go.
things have changed in the DC dating landscape since then. But back then, everybody was on it because it was free.
Oh,
So-
Hinge is now the
Hinge
Hinge, Coffee
one.
Meets Bagel. Yeah.
I've never used dating app.
Have you've never done any
Never.
dating apps?
No, it gives me so much anxiety.
God
But
bless you.
I don't really need to right now.
So I'll
thank
really
God. But
date myself with this.
Yeah.
This was right when they put out an app. Like, I originally made my profile on my laptop.
that's so
On
awesome.
the desktop. Yes.
But I feel
So-
like we've talked about on the show so many times, like the horror stories of dating, not just in DC, but kind of like in big cities in general, right? Like it's hard to meet people. You're really focused on your career, you're busy, you're going to networking events, like you're doing your thing. And so it's really hard to be intentional about like, is this person like relationship material?
Yep.
Or the way, what I found is like all these events in this city especially, everything, there's an angle, right? Like
Yeah.
who are you, what do you do? Can you in your role help me in my role?
Totally.
Like, is there an
It's very
advantageous
transactional.
relationship here on the work side? It's never like, oh, I just want to be friends.
Yeah.
Or like I just want to go meet people that I have similar interests with. So I think it's, again, it might be taboo, but I think it should be normalized.
Yeah, well, and to that point, like my husband was actually really intentional in the message that he sent me. Like he showed that he had read my profile, was interested in actually who I was. And he was like forthright that he was looking for somebody to date and that he was looking towards his future.
Yeah.
And so it really stood apart from like the, "Hey girl," or "You're cute,"
Yeah.
or like there is an actual, like there's a benefit to it in that it can be helpful in weeding out when you're online dating if people are being intentional and forthright about their intentions.
I want to get your hot take since you're in this world on Bumble. 'Cause I've never used it, but it's the one where
The woman
girls
has to
approach the guys.
Yeah.
And I have a like philosophical take on this, but I'm curious what your take is on the concept of the female approaching the male.
You know what? I haven't thought a lot about it, but I'll out
Put you
my-
on the spot.
I'll out my sister-in-law. She met her husband on Bumble. I'm
Really?
like almost
Okay.
certain. Yeah. So it worked out for her. He's
Okay.
a great guy, and she's now pregnant with her second. So
Aw.
stuff's working out.
Good for her. Totally works out.
Shoot your shot.
Yeah, right?
Do it.
I
Just
mean,
do it.
I don't know. I get it from like the safety standpoint, I guess. Like you are more in charge of who you're communicating with if you're the one
Yep.
to reach out as the woman. But also, like, it's nice to be pursued.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of my take on it,
yeah, I
right?
don't
It's like I think
know.
it takes away from like male leadership inherently, right?
Well, that's
It's like-
my rule that I've used that's not actually original to me, but that's what my online dating coach with one of my good friends, she was like, don't ever initiate. Like, let them come to you, because even online, the guys want to initiate. And it's true. Like, the guys don't respond when you initiate.
Well, that's my question. I don't think it's all of them, obviously, but if
what's the demographic for men who go on Bumble, like knowing that I don't have to initiate anything. I just have to let the girls come to me.
Yeah.
I don't
So,
know. Again,
process
my
is-
sister-in-law
So-
is a great guy.
so not all
and I'm pretty
men.
sure
Not all across the
So
board.
yeah, we don't want to make like broad strokes.
Yes. I don't think it's a general rule.
Yeah.
okay.
I just think that, like if you think about the psychology of it, it's interesting.
Yeah.
right?
It is
Like,
But
interesting.
it could also be the guy who does want to be intentional, and he's maybe reaching out to women on the other apps and not getting responses.
That's true.
And so maybe he's thinking, I'm just trying to inhabit this psychology. Maybe he's thinking like, well, I just want the serious women. And it seems to me like maybe the serious
a good
woman is
option.
the one reaching out.
That is true.
So
fair. That's
I
fair.
could
I
think
like
of
that
it
perspective.
that way too.
Both ways. I love it.
Anywho.
Well, for those who are
I'm sorry,
joining
maybe
us-
that wasn't the hot take you wanted.
No, I like it.
it's
I like
great
it.
content. Thank you guys so much for being with us today. Welcome to Problematic Women. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss out on brand new shows. If you're joining us on YouTube, thank you for joining us there. If you're joining us on Rumble, we love our Rumble audience. And if you're listening on Thursday across podcast platforms, we so appreciate you. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's such a huge, huge help to us. We're all playing in the algorithm. So every time you leave those comments and hit that subscribe, it's a big benefit.
It's the algorithm's world, and we're all
It
just living
is,
in it.
literally. We're just
100%.
living in that algorithm world. But Grace, before we start pounding you with questions related to fertility and how to get pregnant and all these fun things, just give a tiny bit of your background. How did you end up in this world of like being a fertility coach?
Yeah,
and living in the
that's-
weeds of this.
That's a good question. I was a health policy major, so I always was kind of interested in doing something in the health space, but not being a healthcare professional, although I was pre-med for a couple of years, so I did kind of think about that.
You dabbled.
I dabbled. But yeah, so it kind of really goes back to getting married young. I got married at 22, which was never in my plan, but God had different plans for me. And I thought my husband would look at me and I'd get pregnant. I was terrified.
I love it.
But we still really wanted to do this like fertility awareness thing instead of birth control. And we kind of decided we wanted to wait like a year before we started trying to have kids. So we took the class, we learned how to chart my cycles so that we could, delay pregnancy until we were ready. But like about 6 months went by and I was like, well, maybe we'll just kind of like loosen up. This is the kind of cool thing about a fertility awareness method is when you're on birth control, you're either absolutely not trying to get pregnant or you get off of it. And so that's kind of like, well, I am trying to get pregnant because otherwise why would you get off of it?
Right.
But when you're using a fertility awareness method, there's kind of this fun in between where it's like, well, we're just going to do what married people do in the gray area and we'll see what happens, right? So it is kind of this fun gray area that doesn't really exist when you're contracepting. So we were in that fun kind of gray area. Well, about 6 months of that went by and it was like, I'm not getting pregnant. What's wrong? Yeah. And I knew enough about what my charts should look like to know that something wasn't quite right. But I didn't really know. And I also knew that there were certain doctors who were trained to look at charts. So those trained in restorative reproductive medicine, either through like naprotechnology or FEM, and also neofertility is another kind of flavor of that. I knew that they existed, and I knew that there was one kind of local, but I couldn't get in to see them before we found out the Navy was shipping us to Guam.
Oh, wow.
So
there's that.
So there was that. I cried. Oh, goodness, did I cry when I found that out.
Yeah.
But it ended up being the absolute best thing because while I was out there, I was assigned a doctor in the Navy who actually knew a little bit about restorative reproductive medicine. He'd studied some NAPRO techniques. So working with him, and in the Navy, of all things, it was so crazy the way it happened. But so he looked at my charts, kind of got an idea what was wrong, started doing some lifestyle interventions, started doing some hormone balancing type stuff, hormone supplementation, and I got pregnant and I miscarried. But then the very next cycle, got pregnant, and that's my son, and he was born on Guam. He can still be president. People ask me, I want to be clear on that. And he just turned 8 years old. So, yeah. So that really, at the time, I was living on Guam, and I was like, what am I going to do with myself? I was working on an online master's degree through Loyola Chicago in bioethics because I've always had a passion for that. bioethics and health policy. I have a lot of policy degrees for somebody who doesn't live in DC and
for you.
work in policy.
More power to you.
Yeah, so for what that's worth. But I just felt this real conviction, like, and I had a doctor tell me that I needed to do IVF after my first miscarriage. And he didn't ask me any questions about my cycle, about my health. He was just ready to kind of put me on that road. And I was adamant. I just said, no, I'm not going to do that. Because I didn't see my regular doctor after I miscarried. We were in San Diego visiting family. So I went to the Naval Hospital. And I had a doctor tell me, well, they say that the Navy won't pay for IVF, because this was back in 2015 or something. He was like, but there are ways around that. Oh, wow. And I just said, no, we won't be doing that. He offered it twice. And the second time I just said, no, we won't be doing that. Because we just had that conviction that that was not how we were going to grow our family.
Yeah.
And I also just knew that wasn't good for my body. And we can get into this later. But so, and continued working with the NAPRO doctor and was able to get pregnant the next cycle. So again, this just like really filled me with this fire, like women need to know about this.
Yeah.
We know nothing about our bodies. We're not taught about anything about our cycles and about how it affects all of us, not just how frequently we're bleeding or not every month. And so I learned about Natural Womanhood at the time. It had recently started, the nonprofit that I now work for, based out of San Antonio. And I was like, I have to write for you, because they had an online magazine. And now I'm the editor-in-chief of that online magazine.
That's so exciting. Yeah.
Several years later. So, but it just started with this conviction of like, how do I tell more women about this? And my husband and I got certified to teach a fertility awareness method via the Couple to Couple League. That's an organization that teaches one flavor of fertility awareness. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started in all of this.
I love it.
So
Okay, so let's get practical.
Sure.
So I think even just starting out, it might be helpful just to kind of understand the science side behind age, and just like, I'm 32, like versus when you're 22, like what are percentage wise, like how does age affect ability to actually get pregnant? And like, I don't have kids right now, but I also want to be doing things to prepare for when I do want to have kids.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, it's a reality. We're getting married later, we're working, we're pursuing degrees, and there is a decline in fertility that comes with age, especially right around that kind of like mid-30s, late 30s mark. We do see a decline in fertility. And I think it is important to be honest about that, but I also think it's important not to like chastise women who haven't found the right man by then and make them feel like it's somehow their fault. I really take issue with that. Because the better thing to do is to educate women about how they can protect and preserve their fertility, so that when they do meet the right guy, they're not starting from scratch when it comes to getting their fertility optimized to have a baby.
Well, this is huge too, not to interrupt you,
Sure.
because I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but we have, and last week we talked about the girl boss era, which is like millennials, right? Which is at least three of us sitting here. No offense, Elise. Guilty. But it's like we were all raised in this generation, not necessarily, especially if you're conservative, we weren't necessarily raised to choose career over family formation, but it's this catch-22 of like, you're busy, you're chasing your career, you're getting degrees, you're doing these, and it's hard to find, the right person. And then you hit a certain age, maybe you finally find the right person, and you're starting from zero, you're starting from scratch, and you're getting constantly barraged with ads from the medical industry. It's like, you're running out of eggs, hurry up and freeze them.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Terrible
Like,
advice.
Hurry up and do IVF, or hurry up and do this, or hurry up and do that. And it's like, it's so overwhelming that I feel like if you are starting from square zero, that you're like, that's my only option. I have to do that.
Yeah, and this panic sets in, right?
Yeah. Which
and
is also not good for your hormones, I'm sure.
yeah, no, and recognize you're being manipulated. Like,
That's huge.
and why? Because
Money.
there's a lot of money in making women panic about losing their fertility.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it comes back to. I mean, you'll hear doctors in that space say things like, oh, I just want to help women achieve the families of their dreams. And I think some of them probably do have their hearts in the right place, but I also think a lot of them see that it is lucrative.
Yeah.
And as far as the egg freezing goes, like, there's not good data to show that really is that effective. I mean, you do hear stories like that. Yeah, I think there was like twins or something that had been frozen for 30 years, and they just were recently brought to life while they were already living, but
That's insane.
carried through a pregnancy and birthed.
Or one that's like a newborn and one that's 10 years old.
Yeah,
They're from
or
the same batch.
exactly. Yeah, so there's all sorts of like it can happen, but in general, the success rates of the assisted reproductive technologies that we're kind of talking about broadly right now are grossly misstated. Grossly misstated. You'll hear them say now that like, oh, no, that it's like 50% effective now, because for a long time it was like between 20 and 30, right? Well, if you dig into the data, that's for women who are 35 and younger. Would any of you like to guess who the average woman, what the age of the average woman is in the United States using IVF?
37.
36.
36.
Okay.
So those numbers don't even apply to you.
Yeah. That's wild.
But you're sold that, right?
And how much does IVF cost to do? Like one round?
Well, so you usually have to do about 3 rounds on average to end up with a live birth. Ballpark, it depends on the clinic you go to. Some of them have like discounted cycles for when your first 1 or 2 fail. So, but in general, the price tag you're looking at that I've seen is like between 20 and 30 grand. So,
Okay. So I don't want to spend 20 to 30 grand. But to Virginia's question, if no matter where you're at kind of in your fertility journey, I guess you could say.
Yeah, sure.
Hormone journey.
Wanting to have babies.
Right. But it's like, what are some kind of practical things that women can do
right.
to your point, prepare, or like, so when you get to the point where you're like, yeah, I do want to start trying, you're ready.
Yeah. Don't be on birth control at all, ever, for any reason.
Yeah.
Because we know it ages your ovaries. We know it ages your cervical crypts. We also know it does things like raise your breast cancer rate, which, doesn't have a direct impact on your fertility, but it's
Still
just
not good.
all
That's not
further
nice.
evidence of the fact, if you then have to go get chemotherapy and radiation because you have breast cancer, that's going to have an impact on your fertility.
Can I interrupt really quick?
Yeah.
Do you know, sorry, this just popped in my head,
Sure.
like super ADHD moment. I saw a reel literally yesterday of some influencer saying that the birth control pill is on like the World Health Organization's
Yeah, it's a carcinogen.
List of known carcinogens.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the first time I'd ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Like I knew like, oh, the pill's not great. Blah, blah, blah.
No, that's common knowledge.
Okay.
Like that's been known.
On the list.
On the list of
Yes.
known carcinogens.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Okay, so don't do birth
Absolutely.
control.
Okay, but so the bait and switch there is like, oh, but it also prevents some cancers. Okay, so it is shown to be preventative against like ovarian cancer and like a couple other, maybe endometrial cancer. Those are so rare. What's not rare is breast cancer.
Yeah.
And
Especially
it will
if
increase.
It runs in your family.
Right, and cervical cancer, not rare either, okay? It will increase your risks of those cancers. So don't be on birth control, okay? Learn to chart your cycles. And I don't mean download an app
Okay.
and have it tell you.
What do I do?
I was like,
Because I was like,
what?
oh,
Yeah.
I have
You
an
had me
app.
and lost me.
And that's okay. I love an app if you're using it for data collection.
Yeah.
Okay? An app should never be telling you when you're fertile. You should know when you're fertile.
And yeah, that's fair.
Okay? Because
Yeah, that's fair.
sometimes bodies defy the algorithm. And so there were all these women who came out, like Natural Cycles is the FDA approved like fertility awareness app, right? There were all these women in the UK who came out like several years ago, a couple of years ago, however long it was, that said like, oh, I used Natural Cycles and I got pregnant and I didn't want to be. And they made the case that it was actually increasing abortions, right? So, because those women are not body literate. You are not actually body literate of your own body and your own cycle if you're plugging and chugging into an algorithm and letting it tell you, letting it dictate your sex life.
Yeah.
So how do you track?
So I use the symptothermal method, but there are a few different.
that.
I will. I'm very broadly talking about fertility awareness methods.
Totally,
Okay, and so there are a few different kind of like flavors of that, but they're all based in the same science. So I'll get into that. There's a symptothermal method which charts basal body temperature. I see somebody has an Oura ring on. Somebody did in one of these podcast
know,
episodes. I
yeah.
noticed somebody had one on.
Yeah.
Kristen, I used to wear
And
one.
there's
I
a
don't
few
wear it
people
anymore.
here who have
Elizabeth
them.
Mitchell, our White House
Yeah.
correspondent.
So
wears
that's
one.
not
Yeah.
technically basal body temperature, but it looks like it's correlating pretty well with basal body temperature from the studies that have come out with it. So symptothermal is where you're tracking temperature and cervical mucus.
Okay.
The Creighton method and the Billings method are when you're just charting cervical mucus. And I'm going to explain all this.
Okay.
And the Marquette method and the FEM methods are, you can chart your cervical mucus, but it's a little bit more important from their perspective to do urinary hormone analysis. So like dipstick, put it in a monitor, see what your hormone readout is.
Interesting.
So that's very broadly kind of the main, and there's Boston Crosscheck and a couple other like minor ones that also use some combination of these different biomarkers.
Okay.
So the reason why we use these biomarkers as a measure of our fertility, so signs that our body gives us as a measurement of where we are in our cycles, that's what I mean when I say fertility biomarker, is because we have known for the body temperature since like the 20s or 30s that your temperature goes up after ovulation. After.
Interesting.
And that's because when you ovulate, your body starts producing progesterone. Progesterone wants to keep your body nice and warm and cozy for a baby. So your temperature goes up on average by 0.4 degrees.
Okay.
Every woman. Like if you're a healthy woman, your body does this and you can chart it. That's why everybody's wearing the Oura ring.
Interesting.
Because you can see that. And it's because of progesterone. So your estrogen dominates the first half of your cycle. Progesterone dominates the second half after ovulation. So in the first half of your cycle, your body's pumping out estrogen after you stop your period. Your hormones are like tanked on your period, which is why you're cranky and have all sorts of other things going on.
Yeah.
Fair.
But you finish your period, your estrogen starts to rise. You start seeing cervical mucus. Because what you're not taught in high school sex ed, assuming you even have had high school sex ed, is that it isn't just sperm and egg. You need high quality cervical mucus to make a baby. So your cervix has crypts that produce mucus. And that mucus performs a couple different functions. It filters out abnormal sperm, so keeps bad sperm from reaching the egg.
Our bodies are insane.
Right? Yeah. It actually filters them out. It provides a channel for the good sperm.
Yeah.
You can see under microscope, cervical mucus has channels that sperm can
That's
travel
so
through.
wild.
Because the vagina is super acidic. And sperm and semen are super alkaline.
Okay.
So sperm can't survive in the human vagina for more than 24 hours unless there's cervical mucus.
Interesting.
So the cervical mucus protects the sperm from the acidic environment of the vagina, facilitates their movement up through the female reproductive tract to the egg, and also filters out the bad ones. Just the good guys get to meet the egg.
It's incredible.
So your cervical mucus is your wingman, all right? Like it's keeping the bad guys out.
Security guard.
It's letting the good
So
ones
you're
in.
giving tips on good cervical mucus.
Yes, yeah. So cervical mucus, and we've known this since like the 50s, follows a very specific pattern over the course of your cycle. You have probably all seen cervical mucus in your underwear when you wipe ever since you were probably like 11 or 12 years old. You probably have thought you've had a yeast infection. You haven't. You have a white flow. You know about your red flow. That's your period. You have a white flow. Your cervical mucus. And so when estrogen is pumping up in the first half of your cycle, that's getting your cervix and your cervical crypts to pump out cervical mucus. Early on, it's looking thick and sticky and opaque, maybe kind of yellowish, maybe kind of whitish. As you get closer to ovulation, it starts to look like egg whites. We even call it egg white cervical mucus. So that is highly, highly estrogenic cervical mucus.
Ready to go.
Which means ovulation is imminent, which means if you want to have a baby, you are getting
That's your
busy
time. Yeah.
when you're seeing that. Because that's the mucus that is best going to facilitate sperm going up and filtering out the bad sperm. And it's also going to make it so that the sperm can survive for up to 5 days.
Wow. Okay.
Which means that you need to be having sex before you ovulate because the egg starts to disintegrate within 24 hours. But if you're having sex in the lead up to ovulation with that good cervical mucus, you don't have to have sex every single day to get pregnant. You just need to be having sex when you have the right mucus because you know you're close enough to ovulation that your mucus is going to be keeping that sperm up inside you and alive, ready to meet the egg when your body pops it out.
Okay. Interesting. So interesting.
So that's how you get pregnant, ladies.
Ta-da! That's simple.
Okay.
And so cervical mucus is super, super important, and we're
Yeah.
not taught anything.
Yeah.
But it's literally essential. You cannot get pregnant without good cervical mucus. And so if your hormones are unbalanced,
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask.
and you're not seeing this very distinctive pattern, so after you see that really good egg white cervical mucus for a couple days, it's going to start to thicken up and dry up. You'll have a period of dryness, and then your period will start. So because you don't need cervical mucus anymore if you've already ovulated. So your body's like, we're not doing that anymore. We either got pregnant or we didn't.
Yep.
And actually, like, that's also kind of what forms the mucus plug, that if you do conceive, it's what like keeps everything plugged up so that baby is safe up inside
interesting.
you.
Oh, that is interesting.
So it's super critical. It's super important to conception, to pregnancy. Like, love and thank your cervix, ladies.
So if your hormones are out of whack,
Yeah.
what are kind of some tips and tricks
To get them
to
back.
get that?
Yeah,
in
so
line.
honestly,
situated?
at a really, really baseline, just first line intervention is just good lifestyle habits. So good diet, exercise, but exercise that's conducive to like femininity. So not like CrossFit every morning.
Crystal.
Because if you're at a healthy body weight, excessive exercise is bad for your fertility.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. So
If you're overweight, you do want to exercise a bit
Yeah.
more. And if you have PCOS, you do want to exercise a bit more. But if you are at a healthy weight, which all of you are here, you don't want to be doing excessive exercise. It's actually not good for you. And there's a reason for this, right?
no, okay, so moment of testimony.
Yeah.
So I taught indoor cycling for 11 years. I was a college athlete, started teaching
Nice.
indoor cycling like when I was in college. I opened a bunch of studios across the country.
Very cool.
And like that industry is so toxic, which is a topic for another day. But like so many women that I know, and there were times where like I wouldn't get my period
Yep.
for like a couple months, and then like whatever, because you're so stressed out.
Yep.
I was teaching 15 classes a week,
Yeah.
45-minute cycling classes, like super high intensity cardio, like overworking, obviously,
Yeah.
right? But it's like, yeah, that has a legitimate effect on your
Right.
hormones in your cycle.
So we need to be telling college age girls this, right?
yeah,
Because I gained the freshman 15, more like the freshman 25. But, and then the summer between my freshman and sophomore year did Weight Watchers.
oh, interesting.
And lost a ton of weight really fast, and also lost my period for an entire semester.
Really?
yeah,
And I was exercising an hour a day, and then I got married a year and a half later, 2 years later, and couldn't get pregnant. And when my cycle did come back after losing it for that whole semester, stuff was off. I had brown bleeding at the end of every period. My cervical
weird. It's
mucus
intermittent.
was
It's like 2 days or
Yep.
like a week and a half. It's just
Yep.
like there's something clearly wrong.
Yeah.
Something
And
is
so
not right
we're
here.
taught to like ignore this, or to be like ashamed of talking about it,
Just deal with it.
or just just kind of hope, like, ignore it and hope it goes away.
Yeah.
But this is why we say, and even ACOG says this, okay, that your menstrual cycle, your fertility cycle is your 5th vital sign. Like, that's not just a gimmicky
huge.
thing to say. Like, and what are the other vital signs, right? It's blood pressure, it's your heart rate, it's your breathing rate. We don't tell women with irregular heartbeats to just shut down their cycles or shut
fine.
down their hearts,
You're fine,
right?
yeah.
But when women
everything's fine.
show up with irregular cycles, we shut them down with birth control.
It's like everything, birth control,
Yes.
like the amount of times I've been to the doctor, especially when I went to the doctors at school.
Yep.
Any problem I had, like, oh, I'm not feeling good, or my energy is really low, or I'm getting acne around my period. Have you tried birth control? Are you sure you don't want to try birth control? Why don't you want to try birth control? I'm like, that doesn't seem like a good solution.
Because it isn't. It
I'm
shuts everything down. It
and I'm
shuts
really
your whole cycle down.
I'm really curious. What are some like red flags with your body that should alert you to like maybe look into this a little
That's
bit
a really
more?
good question. Your period should never be so painful that you can't show up to work. Like, if your period is so painful or so heavy that you can't do life on your period,
Something's wrong.
it's normal, but I mean, it's common,
Yeah.
but not normal.
Interesting. Okay, so how do we get those pain levels down? What are I think we could all benefit.
So
from
you
less
need
pain
to
on the
find a
period.
doctor who actually understands that this is your 5th vital sign, that this is your body telling you something is wrong.
I wish
And
someone had like
so-
a resource for that.
We do. Natural Womanhood does.
Here,
How convenient.
please.
Yeah.
Do tell.
We have registries of doctors who practice this way.
I love this.
Like across the country?
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of them will do telehealth now too. Because a lot of this stuff, the low level intervention, can actually be done via telehealth. You know, they can read your charts if you email them to them. There are apps where you can send charts to these doctors. Some of them utilize these different apps that do that. But the baseline, you need to learn to chart your cycle. Because any of these doctors that you go to, they're going to want to see what your charts look like. Because in their hands, a cycle chart is like an EKG tracing in the hands of a cardiologist. It gives them
They are
a
the
starting
specialists.
point. They are the
This is what they
specialists
do.
for this.
Yeah.
It gives them the information that they need, like a blueprint of your cycle, that they can then use as a starting point for figuring out what's going on. So if you're having a really poor temperature rise, or if you're having intermittent bleeding throughout your cycle, if your cervical mucus doesn't follow a pattern, or you have no mucus, or you have mucus all the time, these are all things that a doctor who's trained in restorative reproductive medicine can interpret and actually get to the root cause of without putting you on birth control, which just puts a Band-Aid on it and shuts down your cycle. You know, it's just so emblematic of how dismissive we are to women to just say, okay, I'm not going to deal with your cycle. I'm just going to shut it off. Okay. And then you won't bug me anymore until you decide you want to change your birth control because you don't like it.
I have friends that have used both the Daisy and Lady Comp, and they've used it more so in the context of either trying to get pregnant or not trying to get pregnant. But even if you're not married, you're not trying to have kids right now.
yeah.
It doesn't make sense to go ahead, spend the $500, get one of those, and
You
start.
don't have to. I mean, you can take an oral temperature every morning if you want to do symptothermal,
Okay.
or you can just chart your cervical mucus pattern.
Okay.
That's the really low level, like baseline way to start tracking your cycle. And then also it's fun to just kind of also track, and not just fun, but also important if you think something's wrong, like chart when you're getting headaches, chart if you have mid-cycle pain, chart when you're feeling really moody. Like these are all biomarkers of what your hormones are doing. And in the hands of a right doctor, they'll know what to do with it, and they can help correct underlying issues. Maybe you have endometriosis. A lot of us do, and a lot of us don't know about it. And a lot of us, it stops us from getting pregnant when we are 30-something and we meet the right guy and we're like ready to have that baby right away. Wouldn't it have been better to get your endo taken care of when you were 17?
Yeah. Yeah.
So actually, I do have a question on that. That is something that I've seen a lot on the internet, especially with young 20-something-year-old women starting to like chart their cycles, be like aware of PCOS, endometriosis. But I also do feel like there's a lot of gimmicky things out there. What do you think is actual science, and what do you think is pseudoscience in terms of preventative measures to infertility? Because I see a lot of like, okay, eat healthy whole foods, sure. But then when I see people say don't use your Bluetooth headphones because you can't get pregnant, I get a little cautious about that.
I think sometimes, your gut can be right about if something sounds a little woo-woo. And it just depends too on like how deep do you want to go into this? Like, are you going to take out every single item of clothing that's polyester because the microplastics are getting into your ovaries? Like, you can go crazy. But the biggest impacts are going to be diet, so low sugar, low carb, and just good carbs when you are eating them, and good fats, good proteins. Like that's the blueprint of. There's a nutritionist I follow on Instagram, and her whole thing, she's wonderfully made, so that I credit her for this. Her whole thing is protein, fat, and fiber. Everything, every meal, every snack. Prioritize protein, fat, and fiber, and do that before you eat a carb. And that's just a really good kind of easy, quick thing to remember, and it's a good way to eat, and it's promotes your fertility. Lose weight if you need to, gain weight if you need to. We need to have a little extra fat on our bodies as women. Like that, the stores of fat help with breastfeeding. They signal to your body that you actually have enough there to grow and maintain a life inside of you.
Yeah.
So weight's important within, reasonable parameters. Rest, lowering your stress if you can, and these are all things we should be telling overworked college girls, right? We shouldn't be putting them on birth control when they show up with acne and irregular cycles. We should be getting to the bottom of it, and we should be, telling them. And I think there's been almost like it's almost been taboo to like remind young women to take care of their fertility, because it sounds like all you do is view them as baby makers. But that's not what this is about. This is about acknowledging that most women at some point in their lives want to become mothers. They do, most of them, not all of
Even at
them.
a more like rudimentary, obviously, like we're talking about in the context of like motherhood and family formation right now, but also to your point, Elise, like when you're in college and you're just like, I have these like hormonal acne flare-ups, or my hormones are out of whack, so I'm like extra stressed or gaining weight or can't keep weight on or whatever it is, and it's like just kind of these like lifestyle day to day, like being.
If you're
feeling
protecting
good.
your fertility, you're protecting your overall health. They absolutely go hand in hand.
They're not separate.
They can't be separate. Like the great lie of the birth control pill, and even really I would argue our IVF, is that we can separate our fertility from the rest of our body. And that's just not how it works, because our hormones, there are hormone receptors everywhere throughout our body. Like it is, and if you're on birth control, you're not laying down proper breast tissue, your breasts aren't maturing properly, your cervix isn't maturing properly, probably why it causes cancers in those areas. Your bones are not developing like they're supposed to, which is why birth control has a known connection to osteoporosis later on in life. The mental health stuff, we know teens who start it, their brains are not developing properly. Like you cannot just shut off your cycle. You need it.
Yeah.
You need a healthy cycle for overall health and development as a woman. You cannot shut it off and expect nothing else will happen. And so that's the great like lie about birth control. It's bad because of the bad things that it causes in your body, but it's also bad because it stops your body from doing what it's meant to do. And there are reasons why your body cycles. It doesn't all just have to do with whether or not you can have a baby.
I
That's
saw
a big
something
part of it.
really
but-
interesting about birth control, where a bunch of women who got off of it realized that they weren't attracted to their partner anymore.
Yeah. Oh my
gosh,
The
I've
men that
seen
they were
that.
dating.
Yeah.
And they were just kind of like,
Because it changes like your brain, basically.
It,
right?
it
Like your
can
chemistry.
change who you're attracted to. They have found that women on birth control are attracted more to women with more feminine features. And then also there's this, it's called the sweaty t-shirt study, where they had women come in and sniff sweaty t-shirts that men had worn. And they had women on birth control do this, and they had women not on birth control do this. There was something in the sweat where they could, and then they also tested the women, but where they could figure out some kind of like immunological factor. And the women who were on birth control favored the smelly t-shirts of men who had immune systems more like theirs.
Oh, interesting.
Whereas women who weren't on birth control favored the smells of men who had immune systems that were unlike theirs. So this even has, and the reasoning for that is unlike, you want unlike genetics coming together.
You think that's why we're seeing the resurgence of masculinity? Because everyone's like off birth control now?
I mean,
It could be a real factor.
you're
We should
more
explore that.
You're more attracted, and I felt this when I'm pregnant. I want to be around my dad when I'm pregnant.
Oh, that's sweet.
Like I really do. Like I've noticed that about myself. And it's because you want to feel protected. Like you want to feel like, if you're thinking like from an evolutionary biology perspective, you want to be in your tribe.
It's
Of
like the joke
men who
women
are
now
gonna
where it's
take
like,
care of
I want a
you.
man who can cut a tree down or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Literally.
Yeah, you want that manly
biological.
man when you're cycling, because if you're not ovulating, you're not having that surge of libido, that surge of estrogen that I talked about. Like that's what makes you want a manly man, right? And it's what gives you a libido. And so women on birth control are flatlining all of that.
Interesting.
sad.
Shots fired.
Shots
Yeah.
Just
fired.
gotta find yourself a Navy man. Virginia. join the club.
Oh my gosh. Wow. But I like how practical so much of this is. Like it comes down to the tracking, the making sure you're eating well, and then exercise that is intentional but not insane.
Not overdoing it.
Yeah, not overdoing it.
Yeah, being a healthy weight and controlling your stress too, on top of a lot of that. And if those kind of first line interventions don't start helping, and there's some different supplementing you can do too. There's some great.
Any you would recommend?
I've taken ProCycle PMS for like years.
Okay.
There's some vitamins that you can find that are like specifically, and there's more now than there ever have been before, but vitamins that are specifically designed with a woman's cycle in mind, so supportive of your cycle. I think those are great because it's just a sad fact that we can't get enough nutrition even with a healthy diet because our soil sucks and we're growing our food in crappy soil, that there isn't as much nutrition in our food and we don't take care of our animals, so the protein we're eating is not as high quality. Yeah, it all comes back together. So supplementing is just kind of something you might need to do. A really high quality multivitamin, I think, is really key too, especially if you're already seeing problems and eating a healthy diet and doing all the things. Like a good high quality multivitamin, if you can find one geared towards the female cycle, that's great. And then if all those things are not working, and this takes time, like you're not going to see change overnight. That's the other thing too, is like this is not a quick fix, but like we're playing the long game here.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to get healthy and stay healthy so that we have healthy babies, right? So that we just feel good too, right? So, you know, if you're trying all those lifestyle interventions for 3-4 months and still just like you have awful painful periods, or you're seeing continuous mucus, or any of these kind of like weird signs in your cycle, like that's you need to go see a restorative reproductive medicine doctor.
And you should go find one of those. Where again?
naturalwomanhood.org. We have
It's mostly for me. I already forgot.
Yeah.
It's like,
We have a list of doctors all over the country who provide this, and like nurse practitioners and people like that can also provide it too. Napro technology is kind of the surgical approach. So if you do have endometriosis, if you do have really insane PCOS that's not being controlled by diet and exercise, they have some surgical techniques that can excise the endometriosis lesions. They can do something called an ovarian wedge resection. If your ovaries are so big and so heavy and so full of cysts, they can actually cut a wedge out of them and sew them back together. Wow. And they've seen that helps restore ovarian function. So they have some different kinds of surgical techniques that they utilize. FEM has some different kind of like pharmaceutical type of interventions they do to balance out hormones. They're really big on like their kind of ethos behind endo is that it's like your prolactin is out of control, and they found that there's some things that they can use to kind of bring your prolactin into harmony and help kind of rebalance your whole cycle. So there are different flavors of what I'm talking about, different kinds of specialists within this broad spectrum of restorative reproductive medicine. Yeah, but once you kind of understand that it's all just getting your cycle in balance, you understand your cycle, you're working with somebody who understands a female cycle and can tell when things are off balance. Like it's all just trying to get that textbook high estrogen in the first half of your cycle, high progesterone in the second half of your cycle, back on track to where it needs to be, because that's what gives us our healthy cycle, and that's what makes us fertile.
Love it. Okay, we're going to talk for a second about Mother's Day. We have to. Okay. But before we get there, want to give a shout out to Hamster Calhoun, who left us a great review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for doing that. They write, never miss an episode, excellent discussion, and an enjoyable listen from these delightful problematic women. Well, thank you. Their show is a great example of why podcasts are such a great medium for both presenters and listeners. So again, thank you guys for all those. Review. I know, so kind.
Take it.
We've gotten some not so nice ones. We might read those next week.
That could be fun too. Bring it on, it's fun.
Again, don't forget to take a second to leave us a rating and review. We love hearing from you guys. But I think we've talked a little bit about the history of Mother's Day maybe years ago on the show. But it is interesting because it stems all the way back to like pre-Civil War. So there was this woman named Jarvis Reeves. Oh, excuse me, Anne Reeves Jarvis.
I was going to say Jarvis for her first name. That's a little
it would be a little rough.
For a woman.
Her first name was Anne. Good for her. Reeves Jarvis. She was from West Virginia, and she started hosting sort of events for women in her community to learn about motherhood, to take care of their own community, even talking about like picking up garbage and how things like that were affecting like health levels and all that. She lost a bunch of kids, so her mission was sort of like, let me try and help other women through that journey and through that process. And then fast forward after the Civil War, she was very pro-unity and actually played a really active role in bringing families together of Confederate and
Reunification.
Union soldiers, that reunification. So after she passed away, one of her daughters was so inspired by her life, who also had her same name, Ann Jarvis, that she said, I want to have a day sort of to honor my mother, but to honor that spirit that women
maternal
carry.
spirit.
The maternal
Love
spirit.
that.
So she advocated for the creation of a Mother's Day. So we had the first official Mother's Day in 1914. President Wilson issued the proclamation about a National Mother's Day. But interestingly enough, it became so commercialized so fast that Ann Jarvis later tried to rescind the proclamation.
Disavowed it.
Disavowed it. Yeah.
Oh,
she was like,
man.
this is not what I intended. She kind of wanted it to be this almost like religious holiday, like honoring families and women. And but here we are.
Hallmarked.
It got hallmarked.
It's not how America
Lots
does
of
it.
flowers. Yeah.
It is.
now.
But
It comes for all of us eventually.
it does. But I'm like, do we have any holiday that has not been commercialized? No, they're all commercialized. Yeah, it's just the nature of it. Maybe Thanksgiving, but that's just because it's like inconveniently shoved between Halloween and Christmas.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't get super commercialized, but still.
Nobody wants to wear a turkey and the colors like brown and orange.
Yeah.
So that's
That's
probably
like,
why.
just give me my Christmas sweater.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
I love it. But Grace, as a mom yourself, what is like the best thing your kids can do for you
my
on Mother's
goodness.
Day?
My kids, I don't know. They're so young. I don't
Aw,
expect
yeah.
anything from them.
Maybe your husband.
Yeah, I don't know. It's-
What's the bar?
I love hearing the history of that. Thank you, because I hadn't actually ever heard that before.
Yeah.
And that's really great. Yeah, I think it kind of back to the spirit of why the holiday was created, just to like have an acknowledgement that your labor is seen
Yeah.
as a mom, that your sacrifices are seen as a mom, and that you play a critical role in your family that can't be filled by dad, right?
Yeah.
Like that maternal spirit, like that's mom,
Yeah.
like, and both moms and dads are so needed. So yeah, I think just kind of just an acknowledgement of that is really nice to
is
have
really
on
nice.
Mother's Day, and I think something Ann Jarvis would have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Would have
yeah,
approved. Stamp
yeah.
of approval.
Yeah.
Are you all getting your moms anything?
My mom.
Maybe I shouldn't ask you to say this on camera. Like, surprise your mom.
yeah, I think my mom actually does watch the show. So.
No, it's top secret. It's top secret. Yeah.
It's hard because whenever I ask my mom, what do you want for Mother's Day? What do you want for your birthday? What do you want for Christmas? She's always like, nothing. She genuinely means it. She has
that's
Flowers
good.
are nice.
Yeah.
I will
Flowers
say
are
that.
great.
So
No,
I
I
don't know any woman who ever is like, oh, I really wish you hadn't got me flowers.
my
Like,
mom does not like flowers.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
she defies.
I think I don't know if it's like her allergies or something,
Oh,
or
maybe. That's
she's like I have
fair.
to maintain it and it
Yeah.
gets wilted. But she always loves a handwritten card.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
there
ever
you
since I was
go.
little, I would like make a card
Yeah.
from like crafting papers and stuff, and write a very long message, and just going and doing experiences for
Experiences.
for
Love
her
it.
birthday. We actually walked around the cherry blossoms, and she loved that. So I think looking for creative ways to have an experience
Yeah.
as
Quality
I'm older,
time,
yeah,
mom.
instead of like, here's this crappy card I made with glitter glue. Like, I'm a little old for that now.
Yeah.
but when the little ones do it, it's very.
It's so
cute.
cute.
Yeah.
when there's like little kids, you're like, how can you not be obsessed
Oh,
with
100%.
that? My mom's
Different
also, she loves flowers, but she doesn't like receiving flowers. She's like, if you're ever going to send me flowers, send me a plant.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Because plants don't die.
Yeah.
Like, that's fair. Okay.
That is true.
If you've got a mom with a green thumb, that definitely.
Yeah. So she appreciates plants, and we just brought her down to Charleston for Easter. So I'm kind of like, that was
You've had your gifts, mom.
That was a lot.
that was Easter and Mother's Day wrapped into one.
Big
I sent her a
package.
card and something. But
Yeah, I love it. I love it. My mom definitely loves the flowers. I feel like that's been the go-to for years.
Yeah.
Order flowers.
I love flowers.
I love flowers
I
too.
do. Yeah.
Just
Do
saying.
you do or you don't?
Yeah, I love
Okay.
them. Yeah. I'm always happy to get flowers. But
All right. Well, Grace, tell us one more time. naturalwomanhood.org. You also have a podcast through Natural Womanhood.
yeah, we do. Yep.
Yeah.
It's not. We don't have the production value yet of
But you
problematic
have
women, but
amazing
maybe
information.
someday. Yeah, I think we do. Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody who's interested in hearing me ramble on more about this and related or adjacent topics, the Natural Womanhood podcast. I do that
Amazing.
there. And then our website is just a really fantastic resource for all things women's health, but from the perspective, from the foundational standpoint, that women's bodies are good, they're healthy, that your fertility is a feature, not a bug of your system. So everything that we write about, and we really do write about the gamut of women's health. You know, we just had article about UTIs, and then we'll also have articles about, you know, different approaches to infertility. So we run the gamut. But it's all like from that foundational premise of birth control is not the answer, IVF's not the answer, like root cause medicine is the answer, and also learn to chart your cycle. Like it's the best investment you will ever make in your health as a woman is actually just learning to be literate of your cycle and your body.
Love it. So practical.
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank
Happy
you.
Mother's Day to all of you
Mother's Day to
listening.
everyone.
And thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been so great.